will sign the transfer papers next week.
No.
I can't believe you're saying that.
You will sign the transfer papers next week. Patricia Holloway said it like she was informing me of a meeting time, not demanding ownership of something that had belonged to my family for decades. She stood in the middle of the Marina access road with 3 HOA board members behind her, a stack of documents tucked under one arm, her sunglasses pushed up on her head like she already owned the place. This property is going back to the community, she continued. My board has already approved it. I looked past her at the road stretching toward the marina. Millions of dollars in paving, lighting, landscaping, and security gates sat on that strip of land. Then I looked back at her. No, the smile on her face twitched. You have 72 hours to comply. I am not signing anything. One of the board members laughed under his breath like I was some stubborn old man who didn't understand how things worked. Patricia pointed toward the marina entrance. That road belongs to the residents now. The HOA has invested over $5 million into this project. We are not asking for permission. You are standing on my land. The silence that followed lasted maybe 2 seconds, but it felt longer. Patricia's expression hardened immediately. Your land? She said. That claim has already been reviewed. By who? I asked. She ignored the question. People like Patricia always ignored questions when the answers might hurt them. Instead, she held out the papers. Sign them, and we can avoid unnecessary complications. I didn't even look at the documents. My father bought this property long before Marina Cove Estates existed. Long before Patricia Holloway discovered the thrill of controlling other people's lives through HOA meetings and violation notices. He spent 30 years protecting every acre. I still remembered him standing beside the old survey markers when I was a teenager, telling me that land was the one thing nobody could ever replace once it was gone. This was never just land. This was home. The road Patricia wanted wasn't some forgotten strip of dirt. It crossed property that appeared on my deed. Property I had just spent a fortune acquiring as part of the 8,400 acres surrounding the lake. Yet here she was, acting like a board vote somehow carried more weight than recorded ownership. Last chance, Patricia said. After 72 hours, the HOA will proceed regardless. Try it. Her jaw tightened. She wasn't used to hearing that word. Around us, several residents had stopped to watch. Most avoided eye contact. A few looked uncomfortable. Nobody challenged her. Nobody ever did. Patricia folded the papers, turned sharply, and started walking back toward her SUV. Before climbing inside, she stopped and looked over her shoulder. You're making a very expensive mistake, Mr. Whitaker. I watched her leave without saying another word. At the time, she thought she was threatening me. What she didn't realize was that her mistake was already much bigger than mine. Because 2 weeks earlier, I had found something buried deep inside the county records. Something that made that $5 million Marina Road the most expensive problem the HOA had ever created. The first compliance letter arrived 3 days later by certified mail. Patricia had not wasted any time. The envelope carried the HOA letterhead across the top in the kind of language designed to intimidate people into giving up before they asked questions. According to the letter, my refusal to sign the transfer documents constituted interference with a community improvement project. It demanded immediate cooperation and warned that additional action would follow if I continued resisting. At the bottom, above Patricia Holloway's signature, was a sentence that made me smile. Your refusal will have consequences. 2 days after that came a notice of noncompliance. Then a community complaint. Then a legal threat from an attorney representing the association. Every document repeated the same theme. The association has the authority to take further action. Everyone else cooperated. Everyone except me. Patricia assumed the growing stack of paperwork would pressure me into surrendering. Instead, it convinced me to start digging. I stopped responding entirely and began collecting records. The next morning, I drove to the county recorder's office with a notebook and copies of every document the HOA had sent. The woman at the counter helped me pull historical property records tied to the Marina corridor. I requested parcel maps, easement filings, survey records, property deeds, transfer histories, anything connected to the land underneath that road. The deeper I looked, the stranger things became. Patricia's letters repeatedly cited Article 8, Section 14 of the association's governing documents as the source of their authority. There was only one problem. The article did not exist. I reviewed the entire document package twice. Then a third time. Article 8 ended before Section 14 ever appeared. Patricia was threatening me with a rule that was not actually there. That discovery alone would have been enough to raise concerns. But the county records revealed something even more interesting. According to the parcel map, the Marina Road crossed multiple sections of my newly acquired property. I requested certified copies. Then I requested the original surveys. Then I hired an independent survey company to verify everything. If Patricia wanted a paperwork war, I intended to win it with paperwork. A week later, the surveyors arrived. They spent 2 full days reviewing markers, coordinates, and historical filings. While they worked, more letters arrived from the HOA. One demanded compliance within 10 business days. Another threatened litigation. Patricia even circulated a community notice claiming I was obstructing access to shared amenities. Residents began hearing her version of the story. Unfortunately for Patricia, facts do not care about community rumors. 3 days later, the lead surveyor called me directly. His first words were simple. "Grant, you need to see this." I drove to his office that afternoon. Spread across the conference table were maps, measurements, and certified copies of historical filings. The deed told a different story. Every version of ownership traced back to the same conclusion. The Marina Road had never been transferred to the HOA. Not once. Not in the original development. Not during later expansions. Not during any recorded transaction. The county records disagreed with everything Patricia claimed. And that was when I realized the HOA might have spent $5 million improving a road they never legally owned in the first place. The survey results should have ended the argument, but instead they opened a much bigger question. If the HOA never owned the Marina Road, how had nobody noticed for all these years? That question sent me back to the county recorder's office for a second time. I requested the complete chain of title for every parcel connected to the Marina corridor. The clerk warned me it could take hours because some of the records dated back decades. I told her I was not in a hurry. By late afternoon, I was sitting in front of a stack of documents that traced ownership through generations. Deeds, parcel numbers, easement agreements, survey revisions. Old filings recorded long before Marina Cove estates existed. One document immediately caught my attention. It referenced a roadway easement recorded in 1978. The legal description matched the Marina corridor almost exactly. I ordered a certified copy and started reading line by line. Halfway through the document, I stopped. Then I read the same paragraph again. The easement belonged to my family. Not the HOA. Not the developer. My family. The filing had already been recorded more than 40 years earlier and remained active in county records. That alone was significant, but I still needed to understand how it connected to the current dispute. The next morning, I visited the county archives building where older property records were stored. A retired records specialist helped me locate historical maps tied to the original land acquisition. Together, we compared survey drawings from different decades. The property line never moved. Not in 1978. Not in 1989. Not in 2001, when the first phase of the development was approved. Every survey showed the same boundary. The survey confirmed my suspicion. The road Patricia claimed belonged to the community had always crossed family property. Then I found something even better. Buried inside a title history packet was a recorded affidavit signed by my father years before he passed away. I recognized his signature immediately. He had filed the document after a boundary dispute with a neighboring landowner decades earlier. Attached to the affidavit was a certified survey identifying every access corridor crossing our property. The Marina route was highlighted in black ink. I stared at it for several seconds. The parcel was still in my father's name when the easement was recorded. Later, ownership transferred into the family trust before eventually becoming part of the acquisition package I purchased. The legal chain was clean, continuous, unbroken. No transfer to the HOA appeared anywhere. No conveyance. No sale. No dedication. Nothing. The more records I uncovered, the worse Patricia's position became. According to county filings, the association had spent years improving infrastructure located on land they never actually controlled. Every new document increased the value of the discovery. Every survey strengthened the ownership trail. Every recorded filing pointed in the same direction. By the end of the week, I had assembled a complete timeline spanning more than 4 decades. Then the final piece arrived. A certified title report from an independent examiner. The conclusion appeared on the first page in plain language. Ownership of the Marina Road corridor remained connected to the Whitaker property holdings. I leaned back in my chair and smiled for the first time since Patricia showed up with her transfer papers. She thought she was fighting over a road. What she did not know was that I had just uncovered a family paper trail powerful enough to threaten the entire foundation of the Marina project itself. At first, it looked like a simple dispute between a landowner and an overreaching HOA. That was the version Patricia Holloway wanted everyone to believe. According to her letters, I was a difficult property owner refusing to cooperate with a community project. According to the documents sitting on my desk, the situation was far more serious. The first person to confirm that came from a direction I never expected. His name was Robert Gaines, a retired contractor and former HOA board member. He called me after hearing rumors about the road dispute. We met at a small office building near the county administration center. Robert arrived carrying a cardboard file box. The moment he set it on the table, I knew he had not come to discuss rumors. He had come with records. Robert served on the HOA board during the early Marina expansion years. According to him, concerns about property ownership had surfaced more than once. Every time the subject appeared, it disappeared just as quickly. Then he opened the box. Inside were copies of board correspondence, project proposals, engineering reviews, and internal communications dating back nearly 15 years. Then another homeowner came forward. Her name was Linda Mercer. She owned property near the Marina entrance and had spent years requesting access to project records. She told me the HOA repeatedly denied those requests. Linda had saved every response, every denial, every notice, every letter. Together, the documents started revealing a pattern. The association consistently treated ownership questions as administrative issues rather than legal issues. That distinction mattered. Administrative problems can be ignored. Ownership problems cannot. Then hidden meeting minutes surfaced. Robert found them inside a folder labeled Infrastructure Planning. The minutes documented discussions between board members and outside consultants during the early Marina expansion. One entry immediately caught my attention. A consultant had recommended obtaining a formal ownership review before construction began. The recommendation was never followed. Another entry referenced unresolved parcel concerns involving the Marina corridor. No resolution appeared anywhere in the records. Then the county records did not match the HOA documents. I spent 2 full days comparing legal descriptions. Parcel numbers listed in HOA planning documents pointed to property the association did not own. Several maps used during board presentations contained boundary lines that differed from official county surveys. The discrepancies were not minor drafting errors. Entire sections of land appeared differently depending on which document you examined. My surveyor reviewed the material and reached the same conclusion. The official county surveys and the HOA planning records could not both be correct. Only one version matched recorded property filings. The county version. As the evidence grew, so did the scale of the problem. The Marina Road was only the beginning. Utility easements crossed the same corridor. Security infrastructure sat within disputed boundaries. Maintenance contracts referenced access rights that might never have existed. Millions of dollars in decisions appeared to be built on assumptions rather than verified ownership. What started as Patricia demanding I sign transfer papers was turning into something much larger. By the end of that week, I was no longer asking whether the HOA owned the road. I was asking how many people knew they did not. And for the first time, I began to suspect that someone inside the association had recognized the problem years ago and hoped nobody would ever look closely enough to find it. The deeper I dug into the records, the less this looked like an aggressive HOA president making bad decisions. Patricia Holloway was still sending compliance letters and legal threats almost every week, but by then I had stopped paying attention to her. My attention was focused on the growing investigation file spread across my office table. Every new public record seemed to connect to something larger. Then an LLC appeared. I found it while reviewing development applications filed with the county during the Marina expansion project. The application listed Marina Growth Partners LLC as a consulting entity associated with infrastructure planning. At first, the name meant nothing to me. Then I searched the ownership records. One of the registered managers had the same last name as a current HOA board member. Another had previously served on a planning committee that approved Marina improvements. That was strange enough. Then funding records appeared. Robert Gaines helped me obtain copies of historical budget reports and reserve fund allocations from several years earlier. According to official HOA communications, residents had been told the marina improvements were funded through normal community reserves and special assessments. The numbers did not match. Large transfers appeared in financial summaries without clear explanations. Several expenditures were routed through consulting agreements connected to Marina Growth Partners, LLC. Then development plans surfaced. Linda Mercer located archived board resolution packages that had never been distributed to homeowners. The documents outlined long-term expansion goals extending far beyond the existing marina. New commercial slips, retail space, event facilities, additional shoreline development. The scale shocked even Robert. None of these projects had been publicly discussed during HOA meetings, yet they appeared repeatedly throughout planning records. Then hidden meeting minutes surfaced. These were not the official versions distributed to residents. They were draft copies preserved by a former administrative assistant who had saved everything. The differences were impossible to ignore. Entire discussions were missing from the public versions. Concerns about ownership verification disappeared. Questions regarding property boundaries vanished. References to unresolved title issues were removed before publication. Every change seemed designed to create the impression that ownership concerns had already been settled. They had not. Then political connections emerged. Marina Growth Partners LLC appeared again in multiple development applications submitted over several years. The same engineering consultants, the same legal representatives, the same development planners, different projects, same network. I spent 2 days building a timeline. Every road led back to the Marina corridor. Every major proposal depended on continued access through property the HOA did not legally own. That was when the entire situation finally clicked into place. Patricia was not fighting for a road because she cared about a road. The road was the key to something much larger. Without that corridor, future expansion plans could collapse. Financing could be affected. Development approvals could be questioned. Existing agreements might become vulnerable. Suddenly, the transfer papers made sense. Suddenly, the threats made sense. Suddenly, the pressure campaign made sense. They were not trying to acquire a simple access route. They were trying to secure the foundation of a development strategy that had been quietly growing for years. And as I sat there reviewing the latest development application, I realized something that made my stomach tighten. The HOA was not the architect of this plan. The HOA was only the public face. Someone else stood behind it. And whoever that was had far more at stake than Patricia Holloway ever did. Once I understood that the HOA was only one piece of a larger operation, I stopped treating the matter like a neighborhood dispute and started treating it like a case file. Every document was organized. Every record was indexed. Every claim was matched against official evidence. The investigation file had grown to several binders by that point, and for the first time, outside professionals began reviewing the material. The attorney reviewed the documents first. His office spent nearly 2 weeks examining property deeds, title history records, development applications, meeting minutes, board resolutions, and every recorded instrument connected to the Marina corridor. When we met again, he pushed a stack of marked pages across the table. His conclusion was simple. The ownership trail was stronger than he expected. The recorded filings consistently favored my position. More importantly, several claims made by the HOA appeared unsupported by the public record. That was exactly what I needed to hear. Then the surveyor confirmed the boundary. Not verbally, not through an informal opinion. Through a formal survey package supported by historical markers, parcel references, and recorded county documents. The surveyor's certification left little room for interpretation. The property line never moved. The Marina Road remained inside the ownership corridor connected to my land. Every measurement supported the same conclusion. Every map pointed to the same location. Every survey reinforced the same boundary. Then the county clerk reviewed the filing. I submitted certified copies of the ownership history along with supporting documentation from the title examiner. Several days later, the clerk contacted my attorney. The recorded chain appeared complete. No transfer documents existed conveying the Marina corridor to the HOA or any related development entity. The filing history remained consistent across multiple decades. That confirmation strengthened the investigation file considerably. Then a land use specialist entered the picture. My attorney recommended bringing in an expert because several future development projects depended on the disputed corridor. After reviewing development applications and planning records, the specialist identified a serious issue. Multiple proposed projects assumed access rights that might never have legally existed. If ownership remained unchanged, future approvals could face substantial challenges. That observation immediately elevated the significance of the case. Then funding records were added to the investigation file. The attorney cross-referenced board resolutions with reserve fund expenditures and consulting agreements linked to Marina Growth Partners, LLC. Several transactions raised questions requiring further explanation. None proved wrongdoing, but they demonstrated how heavily future development plans relied upon uninterrupted access through the disputed property. The pressure campaign suddenly made even more sense. Then the civil complaint draft was completed. We were not filing anything yet. We were preparing. Every supporting document was attached. Every survey was indexed. Every recorded instrument was cited. Every ownership record was verified. For the first time, the evidence existed in one organized package. Then something unexpected happened. The district attorney requested the file, not because of anything I initiated. According to my attorney, questions raised by certain public filings had attracted attention during a separate review process. The request did not mean anyone was under investigation. It meant someone else had started asking questions. Serious questions. By then, Patricia Holloway was still sending notices demanding compliance. She still believed pressure would force me to sign. What she did not know was that the foundation beneath her position was already beginning to crack. The evidence was complete. The professionals had reviewed it. The records had been verified. And for the first time since this started, it felt like the counterattack was no longer a possibility. It was approaching fast. The first visible move happened on a Monday morning. Until then, everything existed inside binders, surveys, filings, and legal reviews. Most residents had only heard rumors. That changed the moment the county survey crew arrived. 2 trucks pulled onto the Marina corridor shortly after sunrise. Surveyors stepped out carrying equipment, official maps, and boundary markers. Within an hour, bright boundary flags began appearing along both sides of the road. Then survey stakes followed, one after another. Every marker matched the certified survey. Every stake matched the recorded property line. Drivers slowed down to watch. Residents gathered near the marina entrance. People started taking photographs. For the first time, ownership was no longer an argument hidden inside county records. It was visible. Then the permit arrived. My attorney had advised me to proceed carefully and completely within the law. A construction permit had been properly issued for a private access control project located entirely within my recorded property boundaries. The permit was posted beside the survey stakes where everyone could see it. The county seal sat clearly at the top of the page. There was no confusion about what it authorized. 2 days later, construction crews arrived. By noon, steel posts were being installed beside the Marina corridor. By evening, the outline of a massive private gate had taken shape. Then came the sign. Private property. Authorized access only. The lettering was impossible to miss. The reaction was immediate. Patricia Holloway arrived less than 20 minutes after the sign went up. Her SUV stopped beside the construction area, and she stepped out holding a folder thick with documents. She walked directly toward the permit board. She looked at the permit. Then she looked at the survey. Then she looked at the fence. For several seconds, she said nothing. That alone was unusual. Patricia always had something to say. Finally, she pointed toward the gate structure. "You cannot do this." The construction supervisor handed her a copy of the permit. She scanned the first page. Then the second. Her expression changed. "This has to be a mistake." The supervisor simply pointed toward the county authorization number. Patricia immediately began making phone calls. Residents watched from both sides of the road. Some recorded the scene on their phones. Others started asking questions Patricia could not easily answer. Why was the county approving construction if the HOA owned the road? Why did the survey stakes match the property filings? Why had nobody mentioned the ownership dispute before? The questions spread faster than the rumors ever had. By the following afternoon, more people came to see the site. The steel fence sections were already being installed. The private gate stood directly across the corridor. The visual impact was impossible to ignore. For years, the Marina Road had been treated as community property. Now a physical barrier stood on it backed by permits, surveys, and recorded ownership documents. Patricia returned again that evening with 2 board members. She looked at the fence. She looked at the survey stakes. Then she looked at the growing crowd of residents watching everything unfold. For the first time since this started, she looked uncertain. And that was when I realized the real battle was no longer taking place inside county offices. It was happening in public view, where everyone could finally see which side actually had the documents. 3 days after the gate became the center of attention, everything reached a breaking point. The neighbors were watching. A crowd had gathered near the Marina entrance long before the county vehicles arrived. Word had spread through the community faster than any official notice ever could. People wanted answers. They wanted to know whether the road belonged to the HOA or whether they had been misled for years. Then the reporter arrived. A local television station parked near the access corridor and began interviewing residents. Cameras pointed toward the gate. Cameras pointed toward the survey stakes. Cameras pointed toward the growing crowd. The cameras were rolling. Shortly after that, county officials arrived carrying document binders and survey maps. My attorney was there. The surveyor was there. Robert Gaines and Linda Mercer stood near the front of the crowd, holding copies of records that had taken months to uncover. Then a sheriff's office vehicle pulled into the lot. Conversations immediately stopped. The sheriff reviewed the documents alongside county officials while residents watched from only a few yards away. Nobody was whispering anymore. Everything was happening in public. Patricia Holloway arrived 10 minutes later with several board members and an attorney representing the association. She stepped out looking confident at first. Then she saw the size of the crowd. Then she saw the cameras. Then she saw the stacks of documents laid out across folding tables beside the survey maps. For the first time, she looked concerned. The county officials began presenting the records one by one. Property deeds, title history reports, survey certifications, recorded instruments, easement filings, development applications, board records, meeting minutes. Everything that had been hidden inside the investigation file was now available for public review. Everyone could see the survey. Large display boards showed the property boundaries. Colored overlays matched parcel numbers to recorded ownership filings. The Marina corridor sat directly inside the ownership chain connected to my property. There was no ambiguity left. Then additional records were presented. Hidden meeting minutes, reserve fund documents, planning materials connected to Marina Growth Partners, LLC. The reporter immediately focused on those records. Questions started coming from every direction. Residents wanted to know why ownership concerns had never been disclosed. They wanted to know why development plans continued despite unresolved title questions. Patricia's attorney attempted to challenge several conclusions, but each time another certified document appeared. Another filing, another survey, another recorded record. The evidence had become overwhelming. Then the sheriff reviewed the final survey package and handed it back to the county officials. Nobody spoke for several seconds. The silence was louder than any argument. Residents looked at Patricia. Board members looked at one another. Even people who had defended the HOA for years appeared stunned. The narrative had completely collapsed. This was no longer a disagreement between neighbors. It was a documented ownership dispute supported by county records stretching back decades. Then the lead county official made a statement that changed everything. Based on the evidence presented, the county recognized the ownership claims associated with the Whitaker property corridor and would proceed accordingly. The reaction moved through the crowd immediately. Patricia did not argue. She did not threaten. She did not issue another demand. She simply stood there staring at the surveys that everyone could now see. And as the cameras continued recording, it became painfully clear that the public collapse of her authority had only just begun. The official confirmation arrived less than 2 weeks after the public meeting. By then, the county review was complete. The survey had been verified. The title history had been verified. Every recorded instrument had been examined. Every property deed had been compared against the county archive. In the end, the conclusion was simple. The county records confirmed ownership of the Marina corridor remained connected to my property holdings. The road was mine. The access corridor was mine. The filings supported it. The survey supported it. The historical records supported it. Patricia Holloway's position collapsed because the documents never supported her claims in the first place. Over the following month, several planned development projects quietly disappeared from public agendas. Marina Growth Partners LLC stopped appearing in new applications. Homeowners began demanding answers from the board. Former supporters started requesting financial records and meeting minutes. I stayed out of those discussions. My fight had never been about controlling the HOA. My fight had been about protecting property that belonged to my family. One afternoon, I returned to the original records cabinet in my office and placed my father's affidavit back into its folder. The same affidavit that helped uncover the ownership trail. The same document carrying his signature from decades earlier. I sat there for a moment looking at it. My father had spent years protecting those acres. Long before there were board resolutions, development plans, consultants, and expansion proposals. Long before anyone imagined a $5 million Marina road crossing the property. He understood something many people forget. Land is not always measured by market value. Sometimes it is measured by memory. The property was worth more than money. The memories were tied to every acre. Family gatherings, hunting trips, boundary walks, old survey markers. Stories passed from one generation to the next. That was why I never signed the transfer papers. That was why I never backed down. This was home. A few days later, I drove through the secured corridor and stopped near one of the original survey markers identified in the historical filings. The marker remained exactly where the records said it should be. The property line never moved. The county records never changed. The truth had been sitting there the entire time, waiting for someone willing to read the documents. For the first time in months, there were no compliance letters. No legal threats. No emergency board notices. Just silence. The kind that comes after a long fight finally ends. Or so I thought. Then my phone buzzed. A message had arrived from an unknown number. Attached was a photograph of a county map. At first it looked unrelated to the Marina dispute. Then I noticed a highlighted parcel number near the northern edge of my property. I had never seen it before. Beneath the image was a single sentence. You proved who owns the road. Now find out who owns parcel 47 to 1183. Then another name appeared in a second message. The name belonged to someone connected to Marina Growth Partners LLC, and according to the attached filing, they had just acquired land directly against my northern boundary.